Respect is often misunderstood as mere politeness, yet for a man it reaches far deeper into the structure of his being. It is not about flattery, nor about blind agreement, but about recognizing his inner authority. From an early age, many men are shaped by the silent demand to become capable, decisive, and reliable. Their identity forms around usefulness and competence. When a partner respects his thoughts, listens to his reasoning, and values his perspective, it affirms this core identity. He feels that his efforts to stand firmly in the world are not in vain. This kind of respect does not mean he is always correct. Rather, it means his voice is given weight. In moments of disagreement, the tone of response matters more than the outcome. Calm engagement instead of dismissal tells him he is regarded as an equal presence. Such treatment strengthens his confidence and softens defensiveness. He becomes more open, not because he is overpowered, but because he is acknowledged. Respect, therefore, functions as a stabilizing force. It reassures him that he does not need to constantly prove his worth within the relationship. Trust is another quiet dimension of respect that profoundly shapes a man's emotional landscape. When he senses that his judgment is trusted, especially in practical or challenging matters, he experiences a deep sense of affirmation. Doubt directed constantly at his decisions can erode his inner stability, even if he does not openly express it. Yet when trust is present, he feels empowered rather than scrutinized. This empowerment does not inflate arrogance, it encourages responsibility. A trusted man often strives to become worthy of that trust. He carries himself differently when he knows someone believes in his capacity to navigate uncertainty. In this way, respect creates a cycle of growth. He feels supported rather than controlled, encouraged rather than corrected at every turn. The relationship becomes a place where he can refine himself without fear of humiliation. Trust communicates that he is seen as capable of learning from mistakes instead of being defined by them. This message settles deeply within him, creating quiet strength that spoken affection alone cannot provide. Finally, respect shapes the emotional climate in which vulnerability becomes possible. A man who feels respected does not experience love as a threat to his independence. Instead, he perceives it as a partnership between two whole individuals. When his boundaries are honored and his efforts are acknowledged, he does not feel diminished by closeness. He feels enlarged by it. Respect allows him to reveal uncertainty without fearing that it will be used against him later. It assures him that his moments of weakness will not erase his value. This assurance is subtle but transformative. He becomes less guarded, more willing to share his inner conflicts and aspirations. In such an atmosphere, emotional intimacy grows naturally. Respect does not demand constant reassurance. It quietly reinforces dignity. And when dignity is preserved, love becomes something stable and enduring. In this stability, a man finds peace, and that peace often means more to him than the repetition of affectionate words. Trust in a man's judgment reaches into a quiet but central part of his identity. Many men are shaped by the expectation that they must decide, solve, and navigate uncertainty without hesitation. Over time, this expectation becomes internalized. It forms part of how they measure their own worth. When someone consistently questions his decisions in a dismissive or suspicious tone, it does not merely challenge a single choice, it unsettles his sense of competence. Yet when his reasoning is heard fully and considered seriously, something steadies within him. He feels regarded as capable rather than inadequate. This does not mean blind agreement or silence in the face of concern. It means engaging his perspective with fairness, asking questions without accusation, and allowing him space to explain his intentions. In such an atmosphere, he does not feel compelled to defend himself at every turn. Instead, he becomes more reflective and more open to adjustment. Trust communicates that he is allowed to think, to attempt, and even to err without being reduced to failure. This recognition strengthens him quietly. It affirms that his presence carries weight and that his efforts to lead, provide, or protect are seen as sincere rather than reckless. When trust is extended during uncertain seasons, its impact deepens. It is easy to express confidence when outcomes are predictable and success is visible. The real test appears when circumstances grow unclear and decisions must be made without guarantee. If, in those moments, he senses belief rather than panic directed toward him, he experiences a profound reassurance. Trust under pressure tells him that his worth is not tied only to immediate results. It suggests that his character matters more than temporary setbacks. This kind of faith does not inflate ego. Instead, it cultivates responsibility. A man who feels trusted during difficulty often strives more earnestly to rise to the occasion. He becomes attentive to his own growth, not out of fear of criticism, but out of respect for the confidence placed in him. Such trust becomes a stabilizing force between two people. It reduces rivalry and replaces it with partnership. Rather than feeling inspected, he feels accompanied. This companionship allows him to face challenges with greater composure. Trust also opens the door to emotional transparency. A man who believes that his judgment is respected is less likely to conceal uncertainty. He does not fear that admitting doubt will permanently damage how he is perceived. Instead, he understands that vulnerability will be met with steadiness rather than contempt. In this safety, he can say, "I am not sure," without sensing that his entire identity is at risk. That simple freedom changes the tone of a relationship. It replaces silent pressure with collaborative growth. He becomes more communicative, more thoughtful, and more willing to seek counsel. Trust, therefore, does not remove his strength. It refines it. It transforms decision-making from a solitary burden into a shared responsibility. In such a dynamic, love is not reduced to comforting phrases. It becomes embodied in confidence, patience, and belief. And for many men, that belief resonates more deeply than repeated declarations of affection. Appreciation touches a dimension of a man's inner life that is often quiet and unseen. Many men are conditioned to express care through action rather than elaborate speech. They fix what is broken, they plan for what is uncertain, they shoulder responsibilities that may never be publicly acknowledged. Over time, these actions become woven into the ordinary fabric of life, and because they are consistent, they can easily be overlooked. Yet, beneath this consistency lies effort, intention, and sometimes silent sacrifice. When these efforts are noticed and sincerely acknowledged, something within him relaxes. He does not necessarily seek applause. He seeks recognition that what he does carries meaning. A simple statement that affirms his contribution can steady him more than dramatic declarations of affection. Appreciation signals that he is not invisible within his own devotion. It tells him that his reliability is not merely expected but valued. This recognition strengthens his sense of purpose. He feels that his striving is connected to something shared, not simply demanded of him. In this way, appreciation nourishes motivation without pressure. It transforms obligation into willing commitment and quiet endurance into meaningful participation. There is also a psychological dimension to appreciation that deepens its effect. When a man's contributions are continually met with criticism or indifference, he may not immediately protest, but inwardly he can begin to withdraw. His efforts may continue, yet the spirit behind them can diminish. Appreciation prevents this erosion. It affirms not only the result of his work, but the intention behind it. Even when outcomes are imperfect, Acknowledging his effort communicates fairness. It shows that he is evaluated with balance rather than harsh scrutiny. This balance fosters resilience. He becomes more open to feedback because he does not feel perpetually judged. Appreciation creates an environment where growth is possible without humiliation. It reassures him that he is not defined solely by success or failure. Instead, he is seen as someone striving in good faith. Such acknowledgement stabilizes his emotional world. It reminds him that he matters beyond utility. In relationships where appreciation is present, tension softens. Defensive patterns lessen because recognition replaces silent resentment. The atmosphere becomes one of cooperation rather than competition. Furthermore, appreciation strengthens emotional connection by affirming shared values. When gratitude is expressed for his persistence, his integrity, or his willingness to endure difficulty, he perceives that his character is understood. This understanding deepens loyalty. He feels aligned rather than isolated in his efforts. Appreciation does not exaggerate his virtues or ignore his flaws. It simply highlights what is genuine. In doing so, it encourages him to cultivate those qualities further. A man who feels appreciated often becomes more attentive and more expressive in return. The cycle of recognition expands naturally. He does not feel pressured to earn affection through constant performance because he knows his contributions are already seen. Appreciation, therefore, becomes a steady foundation rather than an occasional reward. It communicates partnership, fairness, and gratitude in daily life. For many men, this quiet acknowledgement carries a weight that spoken declarations alone cannot match, because it confirms that their presence and effort truly matter. Shared silence is often underestimated in its significance, yet for many men, it carries a depth that words cannot reach. In a world that constantly demands explanation, performance, and verbal reassurance, silence can feel like a refuge. Many men are accustomed to environments where they must prove competence, offer solutions, or defend their reasoning. Conversation becomes a task to manage rather than a space to rest. When he can sit beside someone without the pressure to entertain, justify, or impress, a subtle release occurs within him. He experiences acceptance that is not dependent on eloquence. Silence in this sense is not emptiness. It is presence without demand. It communicates that he is valued not only for what he produces, but for who he is when nothing is required. This kind of quiet companionship affirms his existence beyond achievement. It suggests that connection does not always need to be filled with commentary. Instead, it can be grounded in mutual awareness. When silence feels natural rather than tense, it signals trust. He does not fear that the absence of words will be interpreted as distance. Rather, it becomes a shared rhythm, a sign that both individuals are secure enough to simply be. There is also a psychological safety embedded within shared silence. Many men struggle to articulate complex emotions on command. They may need time to process internal conflicts before they can give them language. When silence is allowed without accusation, he gains the space necessary to understand himself. If every pause is questioned or every quiet moment treated as withdrawal, he may feel cornered rather than understood. But when silence is respected, it becomes a bridge rather than a barrier. He learns that he can gather his thoughts without risking misunderstanding. This freedom reduces defensive reactions and encourages eventual openness. Silence, then, becomes part of communication rather than its opposite. It reflects patience and emotional maturity. In such moments, he senses that connection is not fragile. It can withstand stillness without collapsing into doubt. This realization strengthens trust and eases anxiety. He feels less compelled to perform emotionally and more able to reveal himself gradually. Furthermore, shared silence often deepens intimacy in subtle ways. Sitting together in calmness, engaging in simple activities without constant dialogue, or reflecting quietly side by side can foster a profound sense of unity. These moments are not dramatic, yet they leave a lasting imprint. He feels accompanied in his inner world even when it remains unspoken. Silence can communicate steadiness, loyalty, and contentment more effectively than repeated verbal affirmations. It shows that the relationship is not sustained by constant stimulation, but by mutual comfort. In this quiet companionship, he discovers that love is not always expressed through elaborate declarations. Sometimes it is revealed in the ease of breathing the same air without tension. For many men, this unforced presence provides reassurance that words alone cannot achieve. Loyalty. During adversity carries a weight that ordinary moments cannot replicate. When circumstances are favorable, affection flows easily and commitment appears effortless. Yet it is in seasons of uncertainty, failure, or external pressure that the substance of devotion is revealed. Many men tie a significant portion of their identity to competence and progress. When setbacks occur, they may experience them not merely as practical obstacles, but as personal diminishment. In such periods, they often grow quieter, more introspective, sometimes even withdrawn. If support fades at the first sign of struggle, it reinforces an unspoken fear that their value depends solely on success. However, when someone remains steady beside them during these moments, a powerful reassurance takes root. Loyalty communicates that the bond is not conditional upon flawless performance. It tells him that he is not abandoned when he falls short of expectation. This constancy does not require dramatic gestures. It is expressed through patience, continued respect, and refusal to distance oneself when outcomes are uncertain. Through such steadiness, he learns that partnership means enduring difficulty together rather than celebrating only achievement. There is also a quiet psychological transformation that occurs when loyalty is demonstrated under strain. A man who feels supported during hardship often regains strength more quickly because he is not fighting isolation alongside failure. The presence of someone who believes in him, even when evidence is scarce, stabilizes his inner world. He may not always articulate the depth of his gratitude, but it shapes his perception profoundly. Loyalty reassures him that he is more than his current circumstances. It frames challenges as temporary rather than defining. This assurance reduces shame and prevents the hardening that can occur when one feels judged in vulnerability. Instead of retreating behind pride, he becomes more willing to share his doubts and plans for recovery. Loyalty, therefore, encourages growth rather than defensiveness. It creates an atmosphere where mistakes can be confronted honestly because rejection is not looming in the background. Such an environment fosters resilience and mutual trust. Furthermore, steadfastness during adversity deepens emotional connection in a way comfort alone cannot achieve. Shared struggle forges understanding that is grounded in reality rather than idealization. When he sees that commitment does not waver in difficulty, he interprets it as a profound sign of respect and belief. He recognizes that the relationship is anchored in shared endurance, not convenience. This realization strengthens his own loyalty in return. He becomes more attentive, more protective of the bond, and more intentional in preserving it. Loyalty in hardship does not exaggerate affection. It proves it through action. It affirms that love is not merely a feeling expressed in favorable conditions, but a choice maintained in uncertain ones. For many men, this unwavering presence resonates more deeply than repeated verbal assurances, because it demonstrates that they are valued even when they feel least impressive. Being truly heard reaches into a part of a man's inner life that is often rarely explored. Many men are accustomed to speaking in terms of solutions, facts, and outcomes rather than emotions. Over time, this habit can create the impression that their internal world is simple or unaffected. Yet beneath measured words, there are reflections, disappointments, hopes, and private questions that may not easily find expression. When he chooses to speak about something that matters to him and senses that the listener is fully attentive, without interruption or premature correction, he experiences validation. This validation is not about agreement. It is about acknowledgement. To be heard means that his thoughts are allowed to unfold at their own pace. It means that silence is not rushed and that responses are thoughtful rather than reactive. In such moments, he does not feel managed or analyzed. He feels understood. This understanding reduces the quiet loneliness that can exist even within close relationships. It assures him that his perspective has a place and that his voice is not merely tolerated but valued. Listening also communicates respect for his individuality. When conversations become dominated by assumption or constant reinterpretation of his words, he may gradually withdraw. Not because he lacks depth, but because he senses that speaking does not truly alter the narrative. Genuine listening, however, signals openness. It allows him to clarify what he means without fear of being immediately judged. This process strengthens trust. He becomes more willing to reveal uncertainty or complexity because he believes it will be received with fairness. Listening without rushing to fix or diminish his concerns creates psychological safety. It shows that he is not required to compress his experience into something convenient. Instead, he is permitted to articulate it fully. Such permission encourages honesty. He can admit confusion or frustration without fearing that it will be dismissed as weakness. Through attentive listening, the relationship becomes a place where his internal dialogue can find resonance rather than resistance. Furthermore, being heard affirms his relevance within the relationship. When his ideas, preferences, and reflections are incorporated into shared decisions, he perceives himself as a meaningful participant rather than a peripheral presence. This sense of inclusion strengthens connection. He does not feel overshadowed or secondary. Instead, he recognizes that his input shapes the direction of shared life. This recognition fosters cooperation and mutual respect. Listening, therefore, becomes more than a passive act. It is an investment in unity. It conveys that his experiences matter and that his inner world is worth exploring. For many men, this attentive presence carries greater weight than repeated declarations of affection. Words of love are powerful, but consistent listening transforms those words into lived reality. It assures him that he is not only loved in theory, but understood in practice. Recognition of his struggles touches a dimension of a man's experience that often remains concealed behind composure. Many men learn early to endure discomfort quietly, to solve problems without complaint, and to carry pressure without displaying its weight. Over time, this endurance becomes habitual. He may continue fulfilling responsibilities while privately navigating fatigue, doubt, or external stress. When these unseen efforts go entirely unnoticed, he can begin to feel solitary in his burdens. Yet when someone perceives even a portion of what he carries and acknowledges it sincerely, a quiet shift occurs. Recognition does not require dramatic sympathy. It can be as simple as observing that he has been working hard, that he seems stretched, or that the situation he is managing is not easy. Such acknowledgement communicates awareness. It tells him that his endurance is not invisible. This awareness reduces the silent isolation that can accompany responsibility. He feels accompanied rather than solely relied upon. Recognition affirms that his strength is seen, not exploited. It creates a sense of partnership in facing life's demands. There is also a stabilizing effect when his struggles are recognized without diminishing his capability. If acknowledgement turns into pity or doubt about his competence, it may inadvertently weaken his confidence. But balanced recognition conveys both understanding and belief. It says, in essence, that what he faces is significant, yet he is trusted to navigate it. This balance preserves dignity while offering support. He does not feel reduced to his hardship. Instead, he feels respected within it. Such responses encourage openness. He may begin to share more about what weighs on him because he senses that it will be received with steadiness rather than alarm. Recognition, therefore, fosters emotional connection without undermining independence. It validates his effort while maintaining confidence in his resilience. In this environment, he does not need to exaggerate strength nor conceal vulnerability. He can exist as both capable and human. Furthermore, recognizing his struggles strengthens mutual empathy within the relationship. When he sees that his internal battles are understood, he becomes more attentive to the challenges faced by the other person. Awareness tends to generate reciprocity. Feeling seen encourages him to look more carefully in return. This exchange deepens respect and softens tension. Instead of assuming that endurance is effortless, both individuals begin to appreciate the weight each carries. Recognition transforms silent strain into shared understanding. It communicates that love is not confined to pleasant moments, but extends into demanding realities. For many men, this simple acknowledgement resonates more deeply than repeated assurances. It affirms that their perseverance is valued and that they are not alone in confronting life's pressures. Quiet loyalty often becomes the most profound expression of care, revealing itself not through words but through consistent presence. Many men measure commitment not by declarations, but by endurance, by who remains when circumstances are uncertain, when success is not guaranteed, or when life presents difficulty. Loyalty in these moments communicates a certainty that transcends affection. It shows that the bond is not conditional, that it does not waver according to performance, mood, or external pressures. When he senses that someone will stand beside him without hesitation during trying times, he experiences reassurance that penetrates deeper than repeated verbal assurances. This kind of loyalty is quiet yet transformative. It communicates trust, respect, and solidarity without needing to be dramatized. A man who encounters steadfastness learns that connection is durable, that love is not fragile, and that partnership endures beyond convenience. In essence, loyalty provides a stable ground upon which he can take risks, make decisions, and confront challenges, knowing that he is not navigating them alone. Loyalty also has a stabilizing effect on his inner sense of security. Many men are taught to protect themselves emotionally, often internalizing the belief that vulnerability will be met with judgment or withdrawal. When loyalty is present, this protective burden is lifted. He feels safe to reveal uncertainty or admit struggle because the fear of abandonment is mitigated. This safety encourages openness and gradual sharing of deeper thoughts and emotions. Rather than remaining guarded, he becomes more willing to communicate, collaborate, and participate authentically. Loyalty thus creates a subtle yet profound trust in the reliability of the relationship. It reassures him that the connection is not contingent on success, perfection, or constant performance. Through consistent support, he experiences a freedom to grow, learn, and even fail without jeopardizing the bond. The quiet presence of steadfast commitment becomes a mirror reflecting his value beyond circumstance. Finally, loyalty deepens emotional intimacy by demonstrating that love exists not only in pleasant moments, but also in the difficult ones. It transforms the relationship from a conditional arrangement into a resilient partnership. When he observes that commitment endures through challenges, he internalizes the security and respect that such behavior conveys. This understanding fosters reciprocal loyalty, strengthening the relationship over time. The impact of steadfast presence often outweighs frequent verbal affirmations.